This is TWiT.
Well, with the speed of the news cycle this week, it is tough to remember that Microsoft held one of their biggest conferences this week, Ignite. Joining us to discuss all the news from the show is Brad Sams, author of the upcoming book, Beneath the Surface. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Sorry to hear about your hand. The only thing I would have pointed out about that cast is you could have made it black, and then it would match Microsoft's new hardware they're going to announce next week.
Oh, ooh. I totally should have done that.
That's usually top of mind for you, Megan.
Yeah, exactly, because they let me host Windows Weekly for 3 weeks while Leo was gone. I don't know if Mary Jo and Paul told you that, Brad, but they were three amazing shows.
Best shows ever.
Yes. Okay, so first, tell us what was the biggest event, the biggest announcement at the event?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to look at this. There's the things that they announced that we knew were coming, like SQL Server 2019. That's kind of boring stuff. But the one thing that they did talk about, which was a little complex, which isn't, well, I guess it is traditional Microsoft, is Surface Hub 2, which is their next major update to the Surface Hub product line. Now, they showed this thing off, I believe, in May of 2018. And they showed it off, and you can see it there, and it looks beautiful and it looks gorgeous. And they said, hey, this thing is coming in 2019. And then we get all the news for Ignite, and it's like a record scratch moment here. And technically, a Surface Hub 2-like device is coming in 2019, but the device that they actually showed off earlier this year is not going to arrive until 2020. What they're going to ship this year is what they're calling Surface Hub 2S, kind of like an Apple-esque name, if you will. But what that is, that's going to run the Surface Hub 1 hardware and software experience in the body of a Surface Hub 2. And if you want that Surface Hub 2 that they showed off earlier this year, you're going to have to wait until 2020. So that was kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, this is coming, and then they kind of clawed it back. And we're still trying to figure out whether or not that was Microsoft realizing they can't ship it in time, or if this was always the plan. Because the one argument that they made was that for customers that deployed a Surface Hub 1, they don't want the new one. They want the same OS, so it's across their entire org, which I buy. But in typical Microsoft fashion, they had poor communication earlier this year for that. A couple of other things on the agenda. They announced Office 2019 for on-premises for Mac and Windows is now available, although I believe it's rolling out to commercial customers first, and consumers can get it here in a couple weeks. And then the other big thing that was announced that didn't get a lot of play, but I think this is going to end up being a big deal for anybody who uses Office a lot, is called Unified Search. And what Microsoft is doing is allowing you to use that search box that they have in every single Microsoft 365 application, and you can now pull content from almost anywhere. And so that's going to change the game. You're no longer searching for Format Painter and that kind of stuff. And then we'll see. Again, it's going to come down to Microsoft's execution. And then the last major thing that they showed off relates to the Surface Hub 2, and now it's starting to leak out into other products, is they were showing off Windows 10 with multiple users logged in, up to 16 on the Surface Hub 2. But the most unique aspect about that was that the app permissions can now go down to the app level, which is kind of interesting. You can imagine a scenario where you two are logged in, sharing a PC, although you can't, they're saying you're not going to be able to do it on a PC, but let's say you're sharing a Hub 2. And one of you has content that the other person cannot own. They might be able to read it or whatever, but they can't own that content, be it financial content or HIPAA content. And you're both logged in. If you open 2 Word documents, both from your OneDrive, it will not let you copy and paste it inside that instance. It's just a real granular way of controlling your data in a collaboration environment.
Interesting. One thing that stood out to me on the Surface Hub 2 announcements was this kind of modularity aspect to it, the processor cartridge. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this goes back to, there's going to be 2 products. There's going to be Surface Hub 2S, which is the old software, old hardware in the new frame, and then the Surface Hub 2X, which is the brand new kind of shiny object in the room that everyone wants. And so what Microsoft is telling us is that if you buy a 2S, the older version, or the new version running the old stuff, there's a modular compute unit inside. And what you can do is at some point when they release the 2X, you'll be able to replace that compute unit in the 2S. It's just a modular piece, just like you were saying. It pulls right out, you put the new one in, and you have an upgraded experience running the new OS and everything else. Now, we don't know how well that's going to work. We don't know if they're going to charge more. I would imagine that if you're going from a 2S to a 2X, you're going to have to pay for that somehow. Microsoft isn't talking specifics. I did ask, though, that the connection port for that hardware is proprietary, and they weren't going to give me any more information as much as I pried.
So this wasn't an announcement at Ignite, but what do you make of Consumer Reports revising or re-revising their opinions of the Surface? What do you make of that news? That's today.
Yeah, so what they announced is that, well, they're revising their opinion of everything but the Surface Go, which I believe that is Microsoft's newest piece of hardware. I think this is a good thing for Microsoft, obviously. It's been a long time coming, but Microsoft, even though they've been out making hardware since about 2012, they're still relatively new to this game, and they're starting to get their feet stabilized. They're starting to understand the production dynamics of hardware, and they're getting much better at, frankly, just servicing their own hardware that's out there. So I think this is a testament to that hard work that they've been leading up to, and they're finally getting some recognition that, hey, these things are now finally reliable. It took them a couple years to get there, but it's hard to look at this and say this is anything other than good news for Microsoft.
Another announcement that you actually wrote about was this Windows virtual desktop. I don't know. I want to call it OSAS. OS. Yeah. OS as a service, I guess. Who is this for and why?
So this is definitely an enterprise play. And what this does is allows you to run a virtualized desktop on other hardware. And so you could open up a machine, log in, and have your own version of Windows that is running in the cloud. And so if you couple this announcement with what Microsoft is saying about Surface Hub 2, where they can have up to 16 users logged into one Windows instance, it starts to get real interesting, because you would have to think that this virtual desktop is going to support that same type of a scenario where you have that app level authentication and security mechanisms. So I think it's a touchy subject, not for me personally, but because there's a lot of Microsoft partners that offer a very similar service. And we see Microsoft walking in here kind of as the juggernaut in the room in this space, because they control the software, they control the cloud. In some instances, they control the CDN that's making it all possible. And so we're in the very early days of this. They also announced Managed Desktop as a service about 2 weeks before Ignite. And so when you bundle all of this together, Microsoft is pretty much completing the IT circle. They have the software, they have the desktop, they have the cloud, they have the security, and now they are actually going to be doing help desk work as well. And so Microsoft is positioning themselves to be a one-stop shop for all of your IT needs, which is pretty different than where they were maybe about 5 years ago, where they said, hey, we have great partners who will help you do this. And now they are happily, taking over that role. I don't think customers or their partners are going to be too happy about that, though.
So they also made some announcements about Cortana, and you wrote about this too. What is her future? Is she like going to be like Alexa's assistant? What is she, an assistant's assistant? What's going to become of Cortana?
So this is a fascinating topic, because Microsoft has a problem, as they do with many different things. Cortana is this brand where it was attached heavily to Windows Phone, and we all know what happened to Windows Phone. That ship has sailed, and then Microsoft tried to launch a Cortana speaker called the Invoke. There's actually one behind me back there. And it didn't do so well. They're on fire sales at Best Buy. It never sold very well. They cut the price in half almost a month after it was announced. And then Microsoft and Johnson Controls announced this glass thermostat that was supposed to be Cortana based. And then when they released it, it said, hey, it also works with Google Assistant and Alexa. I shouldn't have said that. My office is
we have a hard time not saying that too.
Just call her Allah. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. And so you've got this digital assistant that's in every version of Windows 10, but Microsoft seems to be pulling back the reins a little bit. And I think they showed off at Ignite what might be the future of Cortana. And I'm going to draw a parallel to Surface here, because I know quite a bit about it. That's why I'm writing a book about it. But Surface is the hero of the PC industry. That's what Microsoft wanted to be, right? It's what do you compare a MacBook Pro to? It's a Surface Book 2. What Microsoft, I think, is doing with Cortana is making it the queen of all of their bots. It's going to be the best bot that Microsoft can build. And then what they're going to do is pitch that to partners to build their own bots. Because if you watch the keynote from Satya, he said, hey, BMW came to us And now they're going to use our stack to build their own digital assistant. And so this is the right move, I think, for Microsoft, because they're not going to beat Amazon's product. They're not going to beat Google's product. They're not going to beat Siri, for that matter. And so they find themselves in this position where their digital assistant isn't going to win, but they have this awesome AI happening underneath. And you got to understand, Microsoft's machine learning and AI capabilities are separate from Cortana. Cortana is just where all that stuff manifests itself. And so they'll continue working on all those features and it'll be added to Cortana. But I really think that Cortana's future is just a showcase to potential partners. Be like, look, come to, if you're Hyatt Hotels or whoever, come to us. We can build you an AI assistant overnight. It can be called Hey Hyatt and can be up and running tomorrow. And it'll have all these features in 24 hours. And I think that's what they're going to be using Cortana as going forward. And I think that's where it's going to reside.